The story starts right away at a scary crime scene where a woman has been killed in a terrible way. Special investigator Will Graham arrives. He's known for being very smart and has a unique talent. He can understand how criminals think and feel, which helps him solve cases quickly. As Will looks around, he imagines what the killer did. The killer came into the house, killed the woman's husband, and then, when the woman tried to call security, shot her in the neck.
This is not a fatal wound. The bullet misses every artery. She's paralyzed before it leaves her body.
This was planned to paralyze her and make her die slowly and painfully. Will believes that murder isn't just violence. It's a design, like a dark kind of art, and he thinks the killers he hunts see it that way too. The next day, Will is teaching his students about this case when Special Agent Jack Crawford from the FBI comes to see him. Jack needs Will's special help with a confusing series of murders. 8 young women in the city have been killed, and they all look strangely alike in age, height, and weight. Will is clearly upset by this pattern and immediately starts thinking about why the killer might be doing this. Jack takes Will to his office and shows him photos of all 8 victims, pointing out how similar they look, their eye color, skin tone, and hair color. At first, Will doesn't want to get involved in such a dark case and even tries to leave. But Jack convinces him, saying that Will's amazing ability to understand people is absolutely necessary. Will reluctantly agrees. That night, they go to Duluth, Minnesota, to the home of the latest victim, a young woman named Elise Nichols. At Elise's house, her parents are overcome with sadness. Will starts asking his unique questions, like if their daughter took the train, which they say yes to. Then he asks a very specific and unsettling question. Did your daughter feed the cat before she went to school? The parents are surprised he knew that. Elise's body hasn't been found yet, and Will suspects she's been kidnapped by the same serial killer because she fits the profile of the other victims. He has a strong feeling her body is still in the house. Following this feeling, Will goes to Elise's bedroom, and his terrible suspicion is confirmed. He finds her dead body, which the killer apparently brought back. Will then tries to think like the killer to figure out how Elise was murdered. He figures out that the killer came in through the window and strangled her. Beverly Katz, another crime scene investigator, shows up, briefly distracting Will. He quickly explains to her that he's a special consultant for Jack. Soon, Jack joins them and asks Will what he thinks. Will confirms Elise was strangled and points out her broken ribs as proof. But he also notices something odd. The killer seemed to feel sorry or change his mind about something, because he took the time to put Elise's body back in her bed. This confuses the whole team. Later that night, as Will drives home to Wolf Trap, Virginia, he sees a stray dog on the road. He kindly takes the dog in, adding it to his growing family of rescued dogs, which shows his caring side. But he doesn't sleep well. He has a scary nightmare where he sees Elise Nichols' body floating in the air, which wakes him up suddenly. The next morning, Will meets Jack at the FBI office. Jack asks Will about the killer supposedly feeling sorry about Elise Nichols. Will guesses that the killer is a psychopath but didn't harm Elise in some way, or rather, returned her body for an important but unknown reason. Meanwhile, in the lab, Beverly Katz finds something important, a tiny piece of metal stuck in Elise Nichols' clothes. This makes Will think the killer might work with tools or in a job involving metal. When Elise's body is examined more closely, they find out more horrible things. The killer had stuck a full rack of deer antlers into her, taken out her liver, and then, strangely, put the liver back inside her body before returning her to her home. Hearing this, Will has a scary realization. The killer, known as the Minnesota Shrike, is a cannibal who eats his victims' livers. He figures out that Elise Nichols' liver was put back because there must have been something medically wrong with it. This idea is soon proven true when the medical examiner says Elise had liver cancer. This explains why the killer, after his usual ritual, decided not to eat her organ and instead returned her body. The story then chillingly switches to Dr. Hannibal Lecter. He's perfectly dressed and calmly eating a meal that is clearly human flesh, the lungs taken from the latest victim of a copycat killer. Hannibal, a famous psychiatrist, is then shown talking to his nervous patient, Franklin Freudevos, giving him calm-sounding advice. After Franklin leaves, Jack Crawford comes to talk to Hannibal. Jack likes Hannibal's detailed anatomical drawings, and Hannibal casually says he sharpens his drawing pencils with a surgical knife, saying this unusual habit helps make his art precise. Jack explains that Alana Bloom, a psychology professor who is friends with both Will and Hannibal, sent him. Jack is worried about Will getting too deeply involved in the cases and his habit of overthinking. He asks Hannibal to do a psychological checkup on Will to make sure he's mentally okay. Hannibal, with his usual hard-to-read expression, agrees to watch Will. Later, Jack brings Hannibal to his office and Will is called in too. Hannibal immediately asks Will why he doesn't like to make eye contact. Will explains that he finds eyes distracting and that not looking at them helps him focus better on other details, even if it's socially awkward. As Hannibal keeps asking subtle questions, Will quickly figures out that Hannibal is there to evaluate him because Jack asked him to. Feeling betrayed and watched, Will gets visibly angry and walks out of the office. The next morning, the police are called to another horrible scene. A young woman's body is found stuck on a rack of deer antlers in an open field. Unlike the Shrike's other victims, this girl's lungs have been removed and are missing. When Will looks at this new crime, he immediately knows it's not the work of the same person behind the earlier murders. He tells Jack this is a copycat, someone trying to act like the Shrike, maybe to make fun of the FBI or Will himself. Will explains that the original killer showed a strange kind of respect for his victims by never undressing them after they died, like with Elise Nichols. This copycat, however, left the victim uncovered and took the lungs, a different organ than the Shrike, who preferred livers. The scene then shows that Hannibal Lecter is actually this copycat killer. He is shown carefully preparing and eating the victim's lungs. Will, still trying to understand the killer's mind, guesses that he must have a daughter about the same age as his victims. Will thinks this explains why the girls were killed in a gentler way and why they were all around the same age. The next morning, Dr. Lecter visits Will at his home and brings him breakfast. Will doesn't know it, but the breakfast is made from the lungs of the copycat killers, Hannibal's own recent victim. Will eats the meal without knowing and even tells Hannibal he's a good cook. When Hannibal asks about the case, Will says again that he's sure the murder in the antler field was done by a copycat, not the Minnesota Shrike. After they eat, Will takes Hannibal to the construction site where he thinks the killer works. While looking through employee files, Will finds a resignation letter and sees the name, Jacob Hobbs. He then asks why Hobbs resigned and if he has an 18 or 19-year-old daughter. Hannibal, watching Will figure things out, looks clearly interested. Now sure they have their suspect, Will asks Hannibal to go with him to Hobbs's house. Before they leave, Hannibal secretly makes a phone call from the construction site office to the house. Abigail Hobbs, Jacob's daughter, answers the phone. Hannibal, using a disguised voice, asks for her father. When Jacob gets on the phone, Hannibal gives him a scary, anonymous warning, "They know."
They know.
Then he quickly hangs up. When Will and Hannibal get to the Hobbs house, they see something horrible. Jacob Hobbs has just killed his wife by cutting her throat. Will pulls out his gun and runs inside, only to find Hobbs holding Abigail hostage with a knife to her throat. As Hobbs tries to kill Abigail, Will shoots him. The force of the shot makes Hobbs's knife cut Abigail's neck. Will keeps shooting Hobbs several times. As Hobbs is dying, he looks at Will and says, "See." Hannibal then rushes to help Abigail, putting pressure on her bleeding neck, and they hurry her to the hospital. Later, Will visits Abigail, who is now in a coma. He finds Hannibal sitting by her bed, asleep, gently holding her hand. The story then shows Will at a shooting range, still practicing his shooting, clearly upset by the violent event. He imagines he sees Jacob Hobbs, which is a sign that he's becoming more mentally troubled. Then, a new and very disturbing case comes up. Some young boys, looking for psychedelic mushrooms in the woods, find a human hand sticking out of the ground among some fungi. When police investigate further, they find many bodies buried not very deep. All the victims were in diabetic comas, and mushrooms were being grown from their living bodies. At this new mushroom garden crime scene, Beverly Katz is there. She talks about the case with Will, who is visibly upset. Beverly tells Will about the horrible discovery. The victims were being kept alive, buried with a way to breathe, basically turned into human plant pots for the mushrooms. Will, very disturbed, thinks about what kind of killer would do such a thing. Freddie Lowndes, a persistent tabloid journalist, also shows up at the mushroom crime scene. She questions Dr. Chilton. Chilton tells Freddie that Will is a special investigator. Lowndes, always looking for a story, secretly takes pictures of Will. As Will looks at the scene, he again imagines he sees Jacob Hobbs and is clearly shaken. In a shocking moment, one of the buried victims, who is barely alive, suddenly grabs Will's hand. Later, Will tells Hannibal about how he keeps seeing Jacob Hobbs in his mind and how guilty he feels for killing him. Hannibal asks if Will thinks Hobbs was a victim. Will strongly disagrees, saying Hobbs was a murderer whom he punished. When Hannibal asks about the mushroom case, Will explains the killer's strange method of treating his victims like living plants. Without them knowing, Freddie Lowndes has followed Will to Hannibal's office and is secretly recording their private therapy session. After Will leaves, Hannibal calmly invites Freddie inside. She tries to use a fake name, but Hannibal, who notices everything, shows he knows who she really is. He takes her bag, finds the recorder, and calmly tells her off for her unethical actions. He then makes her delete the recording, threateningly asking what he should do with her now. A scared Freddy does what he says and deletes the conversation. Hannibal then gives her a task, quietly using her for his own plans before sending her away. That evening, Hannibal has Jack Crawford over for dinner. He serves Jack a dish he says is lamb, but it's actually human meat. Jack, not knowing, eats the meal and says it tastes wonderful. During dinner, Jack asks Hannibal about his session with Will. Hannibal gives a carefully chosen opinion, saying that Will tends to overthink things but is very smart and very dedicated to solving the cases. Meanwhile, in the forensic lab, the mushroom victim who had briefly shown signs of life has died. The medical examiners tell Will that the killer was regularly giving his diabetic victims sugar, causing their kidneys to fail and putting them into fatal diabetic comas. This confirms Will's earlier idea that all the victims of this particular killer were diabetic. The mushroom killer is then revealed to be a pharmacist named Eldon Stamets. A diabetic woman visits his pharmacy to get her medicine. Stamets gives it to her and soon after kidnaps her. When she's reported missing, the FBI's investigation leads them to Stamets' pharmacy as her last known location. Will tells Jack that all the previous mushroom victims also got their medicine from this same pharmacy, making Stamets the main suspect. They rush to the pharmacy, but Stamets has already run away. However, Will sees Stamets' car in the parking lot. He breaks the car window and opens the trunk, where he finds the recently kidnapped woman, alive but buried in soil, clearly meant to be Stamets' next mushroom victim. Their suspicions about the pharmacist are now definitely confirmed, and a search for Eldon Stamets begins. Around this time, an FBI colleague shows Will an online article. It was written by Freddie Lowndes, published because Hannibal subtly encouraged her. The article sensationally describes Will as an unstable psychopath himself, one hired by the FBI because it takes one to know one. It was this very article which revealed Will's special profiling methods that warned Eldon Stamets and made him escape. After this, the FBI raids Freddie Lowndes' motel room and arrests her. Jack Crawford angrily confronts Freddie, even pulling her hair, and scolds her for her irresponsible journalism, especially for trespassing at Jacob Hobbs's cabin, and now for publishing an article that messed up their investigation and put lives in danger. A frightened Freddie promises to stop writing such harmful articles. Will visits Abigail Hobbs in the hospital. She is still in a coma. Alana Bloom is there, kindly reading to Abigail. Will asks Alana why she's there, and Alana says she came to see him, showing she's still worried about him. Elsewhere, Freddie Lowndes is on her way to work when she runs into Dr. Chilton, the man who had previously given her information about Will. Chilton tells Freddie that he has been suspended from his job because the FBI found out he was her source. Suddenly, Eldon Stamets, the pharmacist killer, appears. He shoots and kills Dr. Chilton in front of a terrified Freddie. Stamets then questions Freddie about her article and what she knows about Will Graham. Under pressure, she tells him everything she knows. A short time later, the FBI arrives at this new crime scene. Jack questions Freddie about what happened. She tells him how the psychopath pharmacist, Eldon Stamets, showed up, questioned her about Will, and then murdered Chilton. The story then shows Eldon Stamets sneaking into the hospital. He clearly plans to kidnap Abigail Hobbs and continue his horrible mushroom garden. Jack, realizing the danger, urgently calls Will, warning him that Stamets is after Abigail. Will rushes to Abigail's hospital room, only to find her bed empty. He frantically searches the hallways and sees Stamets wheeling Abigail away on a gurney. Will confronts Stamets, who seems to expect Will to understand why he does what he does. Will shoots Stamets. As Stamets is dying, he tells Will that he knows Will understands that Will, too, can see the connection to nature and the design in death. The police then arrive and arrest the wounded Stamets. Finally, Will returns to Hannibal's office for another therapy session. He tells Hannibal that when he shot Eldon Stamets, he didn't see Jacob Hobbs in him this time, which suggests a change or maybe a hardening in his mind. Hannibal then directly asks Will if he enjoyed killing Jacob Hobbs. Will admits that, yes, killing Hobbs brought him a deep sense of peace, of doing something righteous. Hannibal listens, a slight, knowing look on his face. He then gives a chilling speech, suggesting that even God must get pleasure from killing, since it happens so much in nature and in his design. He implies that all killers, therefore, share this dark enjoyment. Will, visibly uneasy, thinks about Hannibal's disturbing ideas, perhaps starting to question his own abilities and the darkness he faces, both around him and more inside himself. After that, we see a flashback of Hobbs with Abigail, teaching her how to shoot. He then instructs her to kill a deer, which she does. They take the deer's body to their cabin so they can butcher it. Abigail tells her father that killing the deer made her feel bad, and eating its meat will feel even worse. Hobbs dismisses her feelings, saying it's an honor to eat them. He hands her a knife and tells her to butcher the deer. When Abigail hesitates, Hobbs explains that it's a matter of honor. He respects the bodies by ensuring every part is used. So, Abigail starts to butcher the deer. However, we then see it's not a deer at all, but the body of a young girl. This means Hobbs was actually teaching Abigail how to kill girls. Remembering this horrific past event is what jolts Abigail out of her coma in the present. That same morning, Alana goes to Will's house to wake him up and informs him that Abigail has regained consciousness. Will wants to go see her immediately, but Alana advises against it, reminding him that he shot and killed Abigail's father, a fact Abigail is aware of. Will then tells Alana that he feels a connection to the girl because, like him, she's alone. Alana cautions him against trying to become a father figure to Abigail, as it could complicate things further. Later, Alana visits Abigail in the hospital. Abigail asks who she is. Alana introduces herself as Abigail's psychiatrist, there to offer support. She gently tells Abigail that her parents are dead and their bodies haven't been buried yet. She also reveals that Abigail's father was a murderer who killed 7 girls. Abigail is terrified by this news as she was, to some extent, involved in his crimes, though her father had forced her. After this, Alana meets with FBI agent Jack Crawford. Hannibal Lecter is also present, having been invited by Jack. Jack tells them he suspects Abigail might have been involved in her father's crimes and wants Will to talk to her to uncover the truth. Lecter, being Will's psychiatrist, says he can authorize Will to speak with her. So, Jack and Hannibal go to Will Graham's lecture. Will is telling his students that, in his assessment, Hobbs killed 7 girls. However, the last girl found, the one impaled on antlers, was killed by someone else, a copycat killer, possibly as a warning to Will. He also mentions that on the day they apprehended Hobbs, he received a call from an unidentified number, speculating it might have been this copycat killer. Hannibal listens to all this, visibly impressed, and smirks to himself because, as it turns out, he was the one who killed that girl. Meanwhile, crime reporter Freddie Lowndes visits Abigail. She offers to share some crucial information with Abigail if Abigail, in turn, provides details about her father's murders. Abigail reveals that her father used to capture girls, bring them home, and then kill them. In exchange, Lowndes tells Abigail that a man named Will Graham, who the FBI recruited, killed her father, and that Will is completely insane. Just then, Hannibal and Will arrive and tell Freddie to leave. Will asks Abigail if she remembers his face. Abigail confirms, stating that he's the man who killed her father. Will explains that he did it because her father was a bad man. Outside, Freddie Lowndes encounters Will and Hannibal again, and Will blocks her path. She tells him she feels sorry for what happened to Abigail. Will, incensed, scolds her, warning her that he spends all day thinking about killing people, so she shouldn't cross him, or the consequences will be dire. Freddie records this entire exchange and publishes an article defaming Will. Jack later tells Will he shouldn't have confronted Freddie. Will retorts that Freddie had called him crazy in front of Abigail. They all agree that Abigail is deeply traumatized and decide it would be best to take her to her own home to heal under their supervision. Jack allows this, and Hannibal seems quite pleased with this arrangement. Freddie Lowndes then meets with the brother of the victim, whose body was found impaled on the deer antlers. She informs him that Hobbs killed his sister and that Hobbs's daughter, Abigail, is now out of her coma. The young man becomes enraged, burning with a desire for revenge. Alana, Hannibal, and Will take Abigail back to her house. They find that the neighbors have spray-painted cannibals on the garage. Abigail is very distressed by this. Inside, she sees a bloodstain on the floor, a stark reminder of where her mother died. Will tries to reassure Abigail, telling her not to worry and that he'll take care of her. Abigail responds by telling him not to try to be her father, emphasizing that he was a very bad man. Will then asks Abigail about the anonymous phone call she received before the incident at her house. Abigail says she answered it, but doesn't remember the man's voice. She also tells them that her father respected the girls he killed, and that's why, after murdering them, he would use every part of their bodies, much like one would with an animal, ensuring nothing went to waste. This was Hobbs's modus operandi, killing girls and utilizing their bodies completely. Abigail's best friend, Marissa, who lives nearby, comes to visit her. Marissa expresses her sorrow over Abigail's parents and mentions that she's still Abigail's friend and can visit anytime. She also adds that her own mother doesn't want her to associate with Abigail. Suddenly, the victim's brother appears. He confronts Abigail, saying she shouldn't have killed his sister. Marissa tells him to leave, then picks up a rock and hits him on the head, drawing blood. At that moment, Hannibal and Will arrive. Seeing them, the boy flees into the woods. Marissa's mother then shows up and angrily tells Marissa to come home immediately. Marissa defiantly retorts, abusing her mother and reiterating that she's still Abigail's friend. Hannibal observes this with disapproval, noting Marissa's disrespect towards her mother. Will and Hannibal go into the woods to look for the boy, but he's gone. Hannibal spots the rock stained with the boy's blood, subtly kicks it out of sight with his foot, and tells Will they should leave. That night, while Will is sleeping, he has a nightmare in which he is Abigail's father, slitting her throat. He wakes up abruptly, drenched in sweat. The next day, the FBI takes Abigail to the cabin where her father committed his murders. She tells them this is where her father brought the girls and butchered them. Suddenly, blood drips onto Abigail's face from the attic. Will investigates and finds Marissa's body in the attic, killed and impaled on a set of deer antlers. Will tells Hannibal it must be the work of the same copycat killer who had eaten the lungs of the previous victim. Hannibal smirks as he was, in fact, the one who killed Marissa. Jack Crawford arrives and asks Will for his assessment of the crime scene. Will explains that it's the same killer who is taunting them, is very cunning, and is essentially challenging them. Back at the house, Abigail is crying. She remembers her father's words about not wasting bodies. In distress, she tears open a pillow she's holding and finds a clump of human hair, the hair of the murdered girls, stuffed inside. She is terrified. Just then, Nicholas Boyle, the victim's brother, enters the room. He tells Abigail to listen to him, that he didn't kill Marissa, and that he won't hurt her. Abigail, extremely scared and likely believing he killed Marissa, grabs a knife and stabs him in the stomach, killing him. Alana walks in and sees Abigail in a state of shock. As Alana tries to approach, Hannibal attacks her from behind, and she faints. Hannibal then calmly asks Abigail to tell him what she did. Abigail leads him to the body and confesses that she killed him by mistake. Hannibal examines the body and tells her it doesn't look like self-defense, warning her that the FBI will send her to jail. However, he says he has a way to save her from all this. He will help her hide the body. Abigail agrees. When the FBI arrives, Jack asks Alana what happened. Alana, still dazed, says that when she entered the room, someone attacked her, and she fainted. Jack informs her that according to Hannibal, it was Nicholas Boyle who attacked her and also injured Hannibal, but Nicholas then managed to escape. Later that night, Abigail goes to Hannibal's place to talk. She asks him why he helped her, considering he barely knows her. Lecter replies that many people outside will say terrible things about her, and he helped so that people wouldn't say she's just like her father. Abigail then has a realization and says that Hannibal must have been the one who called her father that day. Hannibal admits it. Abigail then deduces, "Then you killed that girl?" referring to the one impaled on antlers. Hannibal accepts this too. He tells her that they will keep each other's secrets and will not reveal them to anyone. Then we see Will meeting Hannibal Lecter. Will tells Hannibal he still has dreams about Jacob Hobbs, specifically about killing him. Hannibal then asks Will how he felt when he saw Marissa's body. Will replies that he felt guilty, as if the killer himself was experiencing immense guilt and killed Marissa as a result of it. Sometime later, Will is called to another crime scene where an entire family has been murdered. Will goes there and, trying to think from the killer's perspective, deduces that the killer first murdered the children and Mr. Turner, and then, finally, Mrs. Turner. He concludes that the killer wants to create a new, albeit twisted, family, which is why Mrs. Turner was killed last, to take her place. Jack Crawford arrives and asks Will for his insights. Will mentions that this family also had a child who was missing. Jack confirms that their oldest child had been missing for some time. Will observes from the family photos that they were once a happy family, but after one child went missing, the family unit became incomplete. Will theorizes that, in his opinion, the killer is a woman who desperately wants to be a mother. We then see the sinister woman who has kidnapped 3 boys. She has already orchestrated the murders of the families of 2 of these boys, and the 3rd boy's family is her next target. She tells the boys that they are now one family, asserting that everyone can only have one true family, not 2. This is her rationale for making them kill their original families to form a new, complete family with her. The 3rd boy, seeing one of the other boys wet his pants while recalling the murders he was forced to commit, becomes terrified. The kidnapper calmly cleans the boy's mess, treating him as if he were her own child. Will meets Hannibal again and tells him he had brought a gift for Abigail, but couldn't find the courage to give it to her. Lecter remarks that Abigail's father taught her hunting and loved her very much. He then asks Will if he feels a paternal connection to Abigail. Will admits he does. Will then asks Hannibal if he feels the same way. Hannibal Lecter confirms that he, too, feels a similar connection. This implies that both men are attached to Abigail because she is alone, and they both wish to assume a father figure role in her life. The next day, Lecter visits Abigail. He asks her how she's feeling at the nursing home. Abigail expresses her desire to leave. Lecter then suggests she come to his house for the day to relax. Without seeking Alana's permission, Lecter takes Abigail to his home. He prepares food for her and assures her that she will be safe there. He also mentions he has made a special tea from mushrooms and encourages her to drink it. When he serves her the tea, Abigail drinks it and becomes intoxicated. Meanwhile, the FBI team is at their bureau, strategizing on how to apprehend the female kidnapper. Will, while continuing his investigation, discovers information about another boy who went missing a few months ago, 200 meters from a location in California. He suspects that the same woman kidnapped this boy and will likely target his family next. Abigail, still under the influence of the drug tea, has vivid hallucinations, remembering how her father was teaching her to murder. Hannibal approaches her and tells her that he will take away all her sorrows. All she needs to do is trust him, and he will guide her through everything. The kidnapper woman sends the third boy, armed with a gun, to his own house with instructions to kill his family. When the boy's mother sees her missing son, she rushes to hug him, tearfully asking where he has been for so many months. Just as the boy is about to carry out the horrific act, the FBI raids the house. Seeing the agents, the boy panics and runs away. Will chases after him. The boy turns and points his gun at Will. Will tries to calm him down, telling him not to shoot. At that moment, his kidnapper mother appears and orders the boy to shoot Will. The boy is terrified and clearly doesn't want to shoot Will. An agent, positioned stealthily, shoots the kidnapper lady, and she dies. The FBI then takes the boy into custody. Later, Jack is in the car with the boy, asking him why he was doing all this. The boy explains that the lady had told him she was his real family, and therefore, they had to kill their old families to become a complete new family. Jack asks him if he would have felt good killing his family. The boy tearfully replies no, he would have felt terrible. The boy then asks Jack if he has any children. Jack somberly replies that he has no children. Alana goes to Hannibal's residence and angrily confronts him for taking her patient, Abigail, to his home without her consent. Hannibal calmly tells her that he has given Abigail drugs, and she is currently in a state of intoxication, suggesting that if Alana wishes to talk to her now, she might find it easier. When Alana enters, she sees Abigail sitting at the dining table. Abigail looks at Hannibal and Alana and says she's very happy to see them back, as if they were her parents. The thought of this new family makes Abigail very happy. That night, Jack is in his room, reading. His wife comes and lies down beside him. Jack asks his wife if they should consider having a child now. His wife simply says it's too late, turns her face away, and goes to sleep. The scene then opens with Will Graham sleepwalking along a road. Suddenly, an approaching police car rouses him. The officers inquire about his name and address, which he provides. Will is visibly surprised to find himself there, pondering how he arrived at that location. An officer asks if he is under the influence of any drugs. Will denies this. His tendency to excessively ruminate on his cases had previously caused him nightmares, and now it had also led to sleepwalking. The following morning, Will visits Hannibal and informs him that he has now developed a sleepwalking disorder. Hearing this, Hannibal suggests it is merely due to the stress of his work, adding that Jack consistently pressures him to work on these cases, which profoundly affects his mind. Hannibal insinuates that Jack is a detrimental influence, akin to a devil, who is targeting him. However, Will remains skeptical as he considers Jack a fundamentally good person. In this instance, Hannibal was attempting to plant negative thoughts about Jack in Will's mind, hoping he would abandon the case, as Will was the only individual capable of identifying the killer. The narrative then shifts to a man exhibiting highly peculiar behavior. When he observes a couple in a hotel, they appear malevolent in his perception. The next morning, the FBI discovers the bodies of this same couple, whom the man had murdered. Jack summons Will to the crime scene, theorizing that this might be the work of the Chesapeake Ripper. He also informs Will that the killer has arranged the bodies in an exceptionally strange manner that would shock him. When Jack enters, He sees the bodies positioned as if in prayer, their backs mutilated by the killer to create wing-like appendages, resembling fallen angels. The FBI also discovers the killer's vomit at the scene, which carries a medicinal scent. As Will adopts the killer's perspective, he realizes the murderer is terrified of his own death. Consequently, he transforms people into angels and makes them pray, hoping this will allow him to sleep peacefully. That evening, Jack accompanies his wife, Bella, to Hannibal's residence for dinner. Hannibal serves them a dish that is quite palatable. Bella's behavior is somewhat unusual, suggesting she is concealing something from her husband. Hannibal remarks to them both that God created humans inherently good, but humans have inflicted cruelty upon themselves, which is why they kill and consume animals. Hearing this, Bella states she has lost her appetite. Hannibal then serves her a drink. As Hannibal approaches her, his acute sense of smell detects something. He recounts a childhood incident where he smelled his teacher and discovered she had stomach cancer. When he informed the teacher, she was disbelieving, but subsequent tests confirmed she indeed had stomach cancer. This anecdote leaves Bella pensive, as she also has cancer, and Hannibal has evidently discerned it. Meanwhile, the post-mortem examination of the bodies is underway, yielding no significant findings. However, within the killer's vomit, they discover numerous medications typically consumed by cancer patients. Hearing this, Will deduces that the killer must have a brain tumor, which explains his use of these medicines. The next day, Jack's wife visits Hannibal for a consultation. She reveals she has been diagnosed with lung cancer and does not wish to tell her husband, as he has other significant worries. After her session, Will arrives to meet Hannibal, confessing that he is becoming excessively immersed in the cases. Hannibal inquires about his current case, and Will explains that the killer is an angel maker who murders people and fashions wings on their backs so they can become angels and pray to God on his behalf, hoping God might forgive him. Hearing this, Hannibal suggests the killer is profoundly lonely, which motivates these actions. Subsequently, Hannibal reiterates that Jack is his enemy, assigning him all these disturbing cases. At this, Will asks if Hannibal intends to create discord between him and Jack. Hannibal denies this, asserting he only desires what is best for his patient. At night, Jack questions his wife about her strange behavior. She offers no explanation. Jack tells her he loves her immensely and implores her not to hide anything from him. However, his wife remains silent and asks him to leave her alone. Meanwhile, the angel maker encounters a security guard on his route who appears malevolent to him. Moments later, he transforms the security guard into an angel and hangs him. When the FBI arrives, they commence their investigation. There, they also find a piece of the killer's flesh, leading them to realize he intends to become an angel himself. Jack urges Will to quickly determine what transpired. Will sharply retorts, telling Jack not to order him around. Hearing this, Jack reprimands him and departs. When the post-mortem examinations of all those bodies are completed, their identities are revealed. The medical examiner informs Will that these individuals were not ordinary people but criminals. This revelation surprises Will, who wonders how the killer knew these people were malevolent. The following morning, Jack's wife comes to Hannibal for a session. Hannibal asks her when she plans to inform Jack about her cancer. She states that she never intends to tell him, because if he found out, he would be devastated. At night, while Will is sleeping, he experiences intense anxiety. When he awakens, he finds himself standing on the roof of his house, having arrived there by sleepwalking. Afterward, he goes to Hannibal and recounts the previous night's events. Hannibal explains that this is a consequence of his cases. With every case he solves, he retains a part of it within himself. Following this, Hannibal asks him about the angel maker. Will explains that the killer possesses a strange ability to recognize evil people and exclusively makes angels out of them. This killer has a brain tumor and is deeply frightened by it. That is why he is turning these people into angels, testing whether God listens to him, and he also wishes to die by transforming himself into an angel. Meanwhile, the FBI discovers information about the killer and ascertains his identity. The man's name is Elliot, who was diagnosed with a brain tumor 5 months prior, after which he had left his home. Jack calls Elliot's wife to ask her some questions. He inquires why Elliot left them. His wife clarifies that he didn't leave them. Rather, she left him because he had a tumor. Not wanting her children's future to be jeopardized, she took them and relocated. She also tells Jack that Elliot desired solitude, and whenever she tried to speak with him, he would behave strangely, as if concealing something. He did not want to tell her about his cancer, so he began to ignore her. Hearing these details, Jack understands that his own wife is exhibiting similar behavior, implying she must have cancer, which she is reluctant to disclose. Elliot's wife wife tells them that in his childhood, Elliot was caught in a fire, as a result of which he was clinically dead for a few minutes but then revived. Doctors considered this incident a miracle because he had returned from the dead. Will asks her where this incident occurred, and Elliot's wife provides the address of that place. Hearing this, Jack and Will go to that farm where they discover the killer's body. He had turned himself into an angel and hanged himself there. Jack tells Will that he caught this killer too, but he is deceased. In response, Will tells Jack that he is becoming too involved in these cases and wishes to quit his job. Jack tells him that if he doesn't want to speak to him either, then it's acceptable. If he desires, he can quit this job, and with that, Jack leaves. Just then, Will experiences a hallucination of Elliot, who has seemingly come down from his suspension. He sees Will's face burning, as if he too were evil. Elliot tells Will that he will make him an angel as well, and then faints. Then we see that Will was hallucinating all of this, and the killer's body is still hanging there. Meanwhile, Jack goes to Hannibal's office, having learned that his wife is there. He speaks with his wife in private and asks her why she didn't tell him about her condition. His wife tells him that she loves him very much and didn't want him to know, as it would cause him pain. Jack asks her what stage her cancer is at. His wife tells him that it's in the final stage, and she is going to die soon. Jack tells her that he doesn't want her to leave him alone. As long as she is alive, he wants to be with her. But his wife wished for him to leave her alone, so she departs from there. A little later, Will comes to Jack's office where he sees him sitting despondently. He tells Jack that he will not quit his job because he stands with him, and he won't leave until Jack talks to him. We then see a prisoner named Dr. Gideon, who was institutionalized in an asylum. Gideon had injured himself and fainted. When the guards arrive, they pick him up and take him for treatment. A nurse is treating him, having laid him on a stretcher and administering oxygen. Suddenly, she looks at the monitor and sees that it's not registering a heartbeat. When she turns around, Gideon is standing behind her. He brutally kills the nurse, which results in the FBI being called to the scene. Will and Jack meet the head doctor there and ask him what happened. The doctor tells them that Gideon had been living there peacefully for 2 years and had never harmed anyone. But today, he brutally killed a nurse, which is profoundly disturbing. He takes them to see the nurse's body and tells them that this is a very brutal method of killing a person. When Will and Jack see the body, they are shocked because several rods had been inserted into the nurse's body, and her eyes had been gouged out. When Will contemplates the crime scene alone, he realizes that Gideon had a knife with him, with which he freed himself and attacked the nurse. First, he knocked the nurse down and gouged out her eyes, and then he inserted rods into her body one by one, causing her death. Jack asks Will what he deduced from this crime scene. Will tells him that this is definitively the work of the Chesapeake Ripper because 2 years ago, they found a body killed in the exact same pattern by that Ripper. Hearing this, Jack asks the staff when Gideon was admitted there. They inform him that he was admitted 2 years ago. This leads Jack to suspect that Gideon might be the Ripper. Then Jack thinks about one of his trainees, Miriam, who had written him a letter to join the academy. Jack accepted her letter and called her to his office, informing her that he would hire her. He placed her directly under his supervision and assigned her the Ripper case so that she could work on it and find the Ripper. After that, Alana, the doctor, and Will discuss whether Gideon is the Ripper or not. Will tells them that he believes Gideon might not be the Ripper because the Ripper's murders possessed a high degree of precision, which was not evident in Gideon's murder. Alana tells him that she knows Gideon. A few years ago, she had written an article about him in criminal psychology. Hearing this, the doctor suggests that if that's the case, she should go meet Gideon. When Alana goes to meet Gideon, he recognizes her. He tells her that he is pleased she came to meet him. Alana asks him if he is the Ripper, and Gideon affirms that he is. Then Will arrives and tells him that he doesn't believe he is the Ripper, so he should stop lying. Gideon tells them that he doesn't need to prove whether he is the Ripper or not. He has committed many murders in the same pattern, and he is the real Ripper. At night, Jack comes to meet Hannibal and asks him about his wife. Hannibal tells him that his wife loves him very much and simply wants to be alone, so that she doesn't suffer. Jack tells him that he constantly thinks about his wife dying very soon. Hannibal comforts him and tells him that cancer is a terrible affliction. Then we are shown a story from the past where Jack had called Miriam to view the body that the Ripper had brutally killed. He tells Miriam that this man was alive when the Ripper killed him, and he wanted to call for help, but his throat was slit. The Ripper removed his organs but left only his heart. Hearing this, Miriam tells him that perhaps the Ripper is a medical doctor because psychopaths are often drawn to the surgical field, and they possess the ability to make clinical decisions even without any emotional involvement. The story returns to the present, where the nurse's postmortem was being conducted. The doctors tell Will and Jack that this nurse also died in the same pattern as the man 2 years ago. This means it's certain that this is the Ripper's work. Jack asks Will if he thinks Gideon is the Ripper. Will tells him that he is not sure. At night, when Jack is sleeping, he receives a call from Miriam, who tells him to help her, or he will kill her. Hearing this, Jack is shocked and tells his team about it the next day. He says that Miriam died 2 years ago, so how could he have received her call? When his team traces the call, they find no evidence. Will asks Jack if he is sure it was Miriam's voice. Jack tells him yes, it was definitely Miriam's voice. Jack tells them that the Ripper must have recorded Miriam's voice 2 years ago and played that recording for him at night because he knows they are working on his case. At night, when Will is working in his office, Alana and Jack come to meet him. They tell him that they also think Gideon is not the real Ripper, but to draw out the real Ripper, they will have to use Gideon, and for this task, they will need Freddie Lowndes. The next day, they call Freddie Lowndes there and ask her that since she wrote about the Ripper 2 years ago, was she completely certain that it was the Ripper's story? Lowndes asks them what they want from her. They tell her to go meet Gideon and record his statement so that she can write about it on her site and gain some popularity. After that, Freddie goes to meet Gideon and asks him some questions. She interviews him and writes it in her article. The article states that some strong evidence has been found against Gideon, proving that he is the Ripper. But according to the FBI, there is still a question mark as to whether he is really the Ripper or not. When Hannibal reads this article, he becomes thoughtful. Meanwhile, Jack goes to meet Gideon and tells him that they know he is not the Ripper. Jack asks him why he killed his wife and children 2 years ago. Gideon tells him that he didn't like them. As Jack is leaving, he receives a call from an unknown number, and on the other side is Miriam, who tells him to save her. When they trace that phone, they find out that the call was made from a house. When they search that house, they find nothing. Then we are shown a story from the past where, 2 years ago, Miriam was reprimanded by Jack because she had entered the medical room without permission and started checking their files to catch the Ripper. Miriam tells him that she thinks the Ripper is a surgeon, which is why she was checking the files. Hearing this, Jack tells her that he no longer needs her help, so she should immediately go to her class. In the present, Alana goes to meet Gideon and tells him that it's also possible that someone instilled the idea in his head that he is the Ripper, even though he isn't the real Ripper. Gideon tells her that's not possible because he is the Ripper. After that, Alana takes the doctor to Hannibal's house for dinner. Hannibal serves them a dish that was very delicious. Alana tells Hannibal that Gideon claims to be the Ripper, but sometimes his words suggest that he knows he is not the Ripper. Hannibal asks the doctor how Gideon was behaving on the night he killed the nurse. The doctor tells him that he was very aggressive. Alana was not ready to believe this because she felt that someone had manipulated him, which is why he was considering himself the Ripper. Then Hannibal asks the doctor if he will help him make dessert. So, the doctor and he go to the table to prepare the dessert. Hannibal tells him about the grapes there and says that if they are peeled, the inside will be the same color as the outside. This is the specialty of these grapes. Hearing this, the doctor understands that Hannibal wants to convey that Gideon is the Ripper, who is the same on the inside as he is on the outside. The next morning, Jack again receives a call in which Miriam asks him to save her. When they trace the call, they find out that it was made from a building. Jack goes outside that building with his team and calls back. The phone rings inside. When they go near the phone, they see that the phone is in a severed hand. And there is a note lying there on which is written, "What do you see?" At night, Jack goes to Hannibal and tells him that he is missing his wife. Hannibal tells him that something from his past must be bothering him, and if he wishes, he can share it. Hearing this, Jack tells him about Miriam. He tells him that she was one of his trainees whom he had assigned to work on the Ripper case. Then we are shown in the past that Miriam had come to Dr. Lecter's office to question him about the Ripper case because she knew the Ripper was a surgeon, and she was visiting every surgeon to find out. She tells Lecter that she needs his patient reports from the last 5 years so she can determine if there is any Ripper victim among them. When Hannibal goes to retrieve the file, Miriam investigates the office, where she sees a picture drawn by Lecter, in which he had depicted his own murder in the same pattern as the Ripper killed people. Seeing this, Miriam understands that Hannibal is the Ripper. But before she can leave, Hannibal catches her from behind and strangles her, resulting in Miriam's death. In the present, Hannibal smiles to himself thinking about this and tells Jack that she was a very courageous girl.